Hello and welcome to a brand new day of free to play here on Magic the Gathering Arena. Get the dish on the latest with me, Lord Rumfish. So, I've got to respond to this Magic at 30 panel they did it for GenCon. They have shown us a great variety of products leading up to 3 years into the future, and I'd like to go over them. I'd like to go over them and give my thoughts on them. Some of them I think are going to be great. Some of them I have my doubts. And just some of them I'm interested to see what happens. So we're going to take it in chronological order as best I can. So the first thing we're going to tackle is this thing near the end where they announce a little secret layer. Okay, here we go. Okay, Secret Lair, Commander Deck, Angels. This looks fine. I remember when Gisela and Bruna came out. It's a cool idea, cool concept. They're both playable on their own, Gisela more so than Bruna. Hopefully time has been kind to them. My memory is that they're playable. And as for a Secret Lair Commander Deck Angels, it's coming out on, I believe they said the 10th, so very soon. They make like, I don't know, 50 Commander decks a year, whatever. Let's get into the meat of this thing. So they're saying 3 themes for the future, which there's kind of a theme of the number 3, right? We're looking 3 years into the future. The next arc that we're looking at is in 3 parts. The story arc, I mean. We'll get to that in a second. And then there are 3 themes here. Innovation for the future and honoring the past. So they want to keep a foot on both sides of the fence, I guess. And I am all for innovation in this case. It's good to keep in track with something that feels like Magic, honoring the past. But I don't want to get mired too deeply in nostalgia. Magic is a game that constantly has to innovate and grow. And I'm all for it. So some of the things that are pretty weird that we're going to check out in this video, I'm not going to naysay. I'm going to save some of my naysaying for the universes beyond. Anyway. Creating something for everyone. That's good. It's ambitious, but it's good. And commitment to Magic lore and story. Thank goodness. It's probably, if you're like me, that's a bit of a relief. Because the universes beyond, it would be at risk of falling down the rabbit hole of what's happened to some games like Mage Knight and HeroClix. And if you haven't heard of those games, there's a reason. They started licensing out their product and bringing in all these other intellectual properties. It didn't save their games. In fact, I think it diluted them and quickened their demise. HeroClix might still be around. I haven't played it in a long time. But let's just say I have seen this happen to other games before, and I'm greatly concerned about Universes Beyond. So, commitment to Magic lore and story is important, not just to me, but objectively, I feel like, for the health of the game, because I've seen what it does to other games. Anyway, these sound good on paper, at least. So we're going to hear a little bit from Mark Rosewater here about a couple of the upcoming things. I will mostly be talking during this video, don't worry. We'll watch little snippets of this.
Mark, what do you got?
Mark Rosewater.
Okay, let's start with 2023. Now, we just did a lot of previews at MagicCon last week. Wilds of Eldraine, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, Doctor Who. I just want...
Okay, well, let me just stop right there. So none of these are even out yet, so let me go ahead and address these as well, right? Just like that secret layer that's about to come out for Angels. There's Doctor Who, Universes Beyond. Mixed feelings for me. I do enjoy Doctor Who. I'm not the biggest fan ever, but I am a fan. I do like the suspend mechanic. So, at the end of the day, if it plays well enough and I get back into like Commander and casual play in real life, I might pick some up. Or I might not. On Arena, I don't know if it'll appear there at all. And if it does, I haven't really gotten into Historic Brawl and Historic and all of that very much yet. And I tried Alchemy for a while, didn't like it. So, we'll see. Wilds of Eldraine, I am super stoked for. Absolutely love what we've seen so far. Love the setting. Love the, going into the Feywild, or whatever you want to call it. That's the D&D term. I'm all for it. Totally going to be covering Wilds of Eldraine. Lost Caverns of Ixalan? I mean, I was a fan of Ixalan originally. Apparently it wasn't very well received. I liked it. I appreciate that we're going back. It's going to be a different tone. It's going to be underground. There will still be dinosaurs and such. So it may still feel like Ixalan to some degree, but it'll be different than the last time we visited, and that's fine. I'm interested to see what Wizards has cooked up here.
I want to get into a few points before we move on. Wilds of Eldraine is the start of a new storyline. So it's going to be a 3-year storyline. We've codenamed it Metronome. That's a code name. It doesn't mean anything. There's not some larger like music plot or something. It's just a code name. Each of the years get named. So the Wilds of Eldraine is the beginning of what we're calling the Omen Path Arc. So that is the arc for the first year.
Okay, so there you go. There's going to be a story arc starting at Wilds of Eldraine that's going to move through the next 3 years. And just to give a little flash forward here, by first or second quarter of 2026, we're going to see the Capstone set, which is going to be kind of like War of the Spark or, March of the Machine. And that's what they say in the video. At the beginning here, we're going to have Wilds of Eldraine, and it's going to be the first chapter of 3. What that means, I'm not exactly sure. It says it's the Omen Path Arc. So there's going to be a lot of moving back and forth between the planes by people who are not planeswalkers. Definitely opens up a lot of new story angles for the game.
The reason we changed the cosmology of the multiverse is to do new and different things. And so one of the things we're doing is what I call a backdrop set, which is we're doing a brand new mechanical theme, but we're putting it on a known world.
Okay, a backdrop set. Now, you might be able to say that Dominaria has featured some backdrop sets. I'd have to dig in a little bit to give you a good example. Actually, let me just say off the top of my head, Fallen Empires. Right? Fallen Empires takes place in the history of Dominaria. It's kind of like a snapshot in time of something that happened. And it didn't necessarily feature all of the same mechanical elements that make Dominaria what it is exactly. But it wasn't irrelevant either. It showed up later in Time Spiral Block. There are still Thalids and Homerids to this day that show up on occasion. So maybe you could take Fallen Empires as kind of like an example of like a backdrop set that was set on Dominaria. So here's Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and it's not beholden to what happened the first time around on Ixalan. It's set on the plane, but it can be mechanically different, and the story and the tone of it can be different. We're going to see this again in a minute with a set idea that I think is going to be pretty cool. Anyway, I'm waiting to see what happens with Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I am cautiously excited, cautiously optimistic. I'm curious what the identity of being an underground set's going to mean. And I like going back to Ixalan. I like dinosaurs. That's cool.
So this is Ixalan. All the things you love about Ixalan, the dinosaurs, the vampires, it's Ixalan. Those elements will be there. But this is not Ixalan Part 2. This is not a return to the mechanics necessarily of original Ixalan. In fact, this was an underground world that originally was a brand new world just set underground, and we realized as we were building it that the perfect place for it to be was Ixalan, and so we made...
Now that point's interesting to me. They were going to make a unique world, and they decided that enough of the things about it already meshed with Ixalan not to make a new world. I wonder if that's an opportunity in terms of the storytelling, an opportunity to revisit Ixalan because they wanted to and it was going to be difficult otherwise, or whether it's getting cold feet about making a new setting. And you could kind of take a read on it either way. I'm going to take the positive spin and go with the former, though. I feel like with the things they're showing us throughout this preview, they're not afraid of making new worlds. So I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to go back to Ixalan, so I don't mind. I don't mind that we lost, underground world and it became Ixalan instead. I think that's okay.
Now, another new thing that we're doing in this set is we're introducing something called special guests. These are highly desirable reprints that we're going to match to the world and flavor in the world that they appear in, and they're going to show up incorporated into the list and in collector boosters. Yet another...
Okay, special guests. So he said it would be showing up in the list, incorporated into set and collector boosters, highly valuable reprints that fit the flavor of the set. That's interesting. I don't think the list is well engineered at this point for providing reprints. It's got, hundreds and hundreds of cards and a bunch of garbage on it at this point. Kind of like anyone at Wizards who had a pet card, with banding or whatever, just kind of threw it in as a list card. And they don't show up very often in booster packs, so it's hard to get much volume that way. But it's a neat idea.
Universes Beyond was born out of the idea that Magic can be a platform or a gameplay system to experience our favorite fandoms. Ixalan is a set synonymous to dinosaurs in Magic's multiverse, and Jurassic World is synonymous with dinosaurs worldwide.
Okay, so Jurassic World. I did read some of the novels, did watch some of the movies. I guess it's fine. Especially the dinosaurs themselves, right? Magic can handle dinosaurs. Now, jeeps and guns and, computer failures and that kind of stuff, that doesn't feel much like Magic. We'll see. We'll see how they want to incorporate the elements of, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, whatever, into Magic. If they focus on the dinosaurs, I think it's going to be fine.
Mechanically unique cards will be found in set and collector boosters that bring plenty of new dinosaur-themed cards to your playgroup. Additionally, Secret Lair is partnering with Jurassic World for not one, but 2 special Secret Lair drops that will release later this year.
Alright, Secret Lairs, yada yada yada. I don't really care much about Secret Lairs. Mechanically unique cards showing up in some of the boosters could be interesting. I'm guessing those are not going to be standard legal. we'll see if I get naysayed on that. But if they're not standard legal and they don't show up in draft boosters for limited play, then it's just kind of a curiosity to me, more so than anything.
Following the amazing main set release, The Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth is being revisited this November with a special...
Okay. So, in case you missed it, there's going to be a second release of stuff for Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. I was a little confused about this when I was shopping on Amazon, and I noticed that there were these Jumpstart booster boxes that were Volume 2. Volume 2 for Tales of Middle-earth. Apparently they have different Jumpstart packets in them, different assortments of cards, and I think she's going to tell us here in a second they have some mechanically unique cards even.
holiday release that brings new treatments, a handful of mechanically unique cards,
Yep.
and some new scenes. We wanted to show you one of the treatments that will be in collector boosters this November. Sauron, the Dark Lord, in the...
Okay, so this like monster movie poster, heavy metal kind of art that they've done a few times now in secret layers and places. Can you imagine if a double feature had been a carefully curated draft set and all of the art in double feature had been like this? Innistrad double feature? What if it had been art like this for the entire double feature set? Anyway.
Borderless poster treatment. We're also going to show you a piece of one of the unique scenes in the scene boxes, the Might of Galadriel, which will have some new cards to add to your Lord of the Ring decks. Speaking of Lord of the Rings, which has a unique place in our digital magic ecosystem, I think it's time we hear from Chris Kiritz on the Arena team.
We've got some interesting points to hear about Arena in the midst of all of this. You thought this was just going to be like a paper magic covering thing here. No, I'm going to be talking about points on Arena specifically too.
For the end of 23, we have some more big moments. Our 5th anniversary is next month, and we're going to celebrate with players, and we probably have a few tricks up our sleeve to share next month.
Okay, so 5-year anniversary happening next month. Say they have some tricks up their sleeve. Sounds cool to me. Maybe some neat free-to-play formats. Maybe some, special codes and XP and pack giveaways. There's a lot of ways that they could make it special and really, incentivize the players to log in every day and participate in their 5-year anniversary for Arena. I hope it's really cool. We'll see.
Hot on the heels of that, we're going to release Wilds of Eldraine, and with it, we'll include something people have been asking for a while, improved duplicate protection. This will help all those players who have been with us the last 5 years and may not need a 13th copy of Duress in their collection. We've also started to explore a new achievement system.
Okay, improved duplicate protection. And he says for all those players who don't need a 13th copy of Duress, does this mean that they would finally add the improvement that if you have 4 copies of a card in any printing, anytime, anywhere, that you can choose what style it is, including from what set the card is, to where the set that it's from becomes like a cosmetic option. And then all the excess copies beyond that just get added to your vault progress. Or, it could be even better than that. They could add like a dusting system or something, but I'm just thinking realistically in terms of the systems that are already in place in the game. Just, we don't have to collect 4 copies of a card in every version of it that comes out, in every set that comes out. Just, get your playset, choose what version of it you want, including the set symbol and all of that, and just all the rest goes to vault progress. That would be an improvement, for sure.
To help us provide rewards that go beyond wins and losses and encourage more types of play. We're excited about this space and look forward to sharing more as we build out the system. Finally, we're continuing to explore how we deliver classic card content. For instance, Shadows Over the Innistrad will be the last remaster on Arena for a while.
Okay. So, last remaster on Arena for a while. And
Which does mean we won't have some of the exciting remasters you hear about a little bit later, but it doesn't mean we're resting on our laurels. Before the end of the year, we'll take another major step towards Pioneer with the full release of Khans of Tarkir.
Okay, full release of Khans of Tarkir. It sounds like they're gearing up for, making Pioneer a reality onto Arena, taking like concrete steps to go that direction. That's very cool. I remember Khans of Tarkir. I was playing then. I've still got a standard deck somewhere in one of these boxes that I made in that format. I called it Turtles All the Way Down. The idea of it was I used Wandering Tower Shell to attack and then like exile itself to disappear. And I used like Fido Titan, the 7/2 that keeps coming back from your graveyard over and over. And I played board sweepers. Turtle attacks, disappears, sweep the board. Fido Titans come back, turtles come back, tapped and attacking the next turn. This is a neat deck. It actually paired up pretty well against most of the people I played at the time. I don't know how it would play now against modern decks, but let's just say I got a kick out of it at the time. Okay, so here's Mark Rosewater again.
So the first thing of 2024 is Ravnica Remastered. So we know the players love Ravnica. It's one of the most popular planes we've done. We've been there on 3 different occasions. So we're going to take cards from all 3 sets and put them together to make a really fun draft environment that's going to...
Remastered sets don't do much for me, personally. I understand that they might be very fun, draft environments and all of that. But, I was there. I was there, Gandalf. I played those sets. I remember those stories. I don't have to relive the nostalgia of my youth. I'm ready to move on to the freaking weird sets. I don't know what else to tell you. I like my cards to be standard legal. I like them to be part of, either like current standard stuff or giving me like new cards that I've never seen before that I might think about putting in like a casual deck or a commander deck or something. So a reprint set like this, it's for somebody for sure. I don't want to rain on your parade, but it's not for me.
play into everything that makes Ravnica, especially the guilds. And because it's a little bit of a throwback, we're also going to have some retro frames that we're putting inside the product. So if you...
I do like retro frames. Call me an old man, whatever. I started playing right about the time the new frames were introduced, and there were some problems with the new frames right at the start. Like in original Mirrodin, the colored mana symbols didn't show up correctly on artifacts. They were grayed out in the text box. Artifacts and white cards didn't have enough of a distinct border from one another, and I always thought that the original frame, now they call retro frame, artifact border, that dark kind of brown border, was much more fitting and was much more beautiful than artifacts have looked since then. That's just my opinion. Just throwing in my 2 cents on something aesthetic.
Okay, which brings us to our first new set of 2024, Murders at Karlov Manor. So I explained with Ixalan that we do what we're calling backdrop sets, in which we take a brand new mechanical theme, but put it in a known world. So we are doing a top-down murder mystery set.
So, here's another example of a backdrop set after Caverns of Ixalan. We're going to Ravnica, but it's not about the guilds. It just happens to take place there. That sounds pretty freaking cool to me. Ravnica is a setting that I have considered running D&D campaigns in. Actually started to at one point for a Planeswalker game. Unfortunately, didn't get very far, but I still think it would have a lot of interesting play to it. So this is exciting. You know, maybe I'm supposed to recognize all of these characters. Is this like Aurelia or something? Looks like an Izzet Viashino, maybe? Looks like she's from Rakdos. This guy looks a little bit like he's got Jace's coat. Could be Azorius. She seems like Orzhov, maybe. And Goblin in a Crown, I'm probably supposed to know him, aren't I? Is this like Krinko or something? Is he from a different world? Probably supposed to know him. Oh well. Ravnica's a great setting. I think all kinds of neat stuff could be done with Ravnica. Murder mystery set, color me curious.
Set play into all the genres and tropes of murder mystery, but we are setting it on Ravnica. Now, I should stress, this is not a normal Ravnica set. It's not sort of about the guilds. I mean, the guilds are here creatively, but if you want to play the guilds, we have Ravnica Remastered that's right before this, have a chance to play the guilds. This is a cool murder mystery set. And we've done something really neat, which is there are murders woven into the story, and there are mysteries woven into the game itself, where you, the players, will get to solve puzzles and solve your own mystery. We've spent a lot of time planning on this. I was on the group that did it. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait for you guys to try it.
Now, it's hard to speculate on what that means exactly. You know, it could be a bit of hyperbole, where there are just sort of different ways the game can play out, and different ways that you could, quote-unquote, solve the mystery. But what if there's something more mechanically tied to this? You know, not exactly like a dungeon maybe, or the ring tempts you. Although since they've done both of those things, now I'm wondering if they might. Where you could kind of do fill in the blanks. Almost like a game of Clue, and apparently they are going to have a Clue crossover with Ravnica. We'll see that in just a second. But yeah, some kind of fill in the blanks where maybe you do progress through this mystery that you solve, possibly not unlike a dungeon, and there are different ways that you can solve it. Maybe there are cards with keywords attached to them that can fill in the blanks as you go and can give you different game effects as you go. It sounds complicated, and that might not be what's happening at all. I'm just speculating.
And there's one other cool thing going on with this set that Athena's going to tell you about.
We are taking the fun of Magic and the fun of Clue and combining them into a release that stands on its own for fans of both Magic and Clue. We've partnered with Clue to celebrate their 75th anniversary. Last year, they introduced reimagined versions of the infamous cast, which
I hope that this is a more nuanced, interesting version of the game of Clue than the original. The original is pretty lacking in diverse gameplay, let us say. You know, maybe an interesting innovation for the time it was created. To be fair, I haven't picked up a modern game of Clue in a long time. Maybe they've greatly changed the rules and the way the game is played.
We have incorporated to create a brand new whodunit experience, combining the beloved evidence-gathering sleuth gameplay of Clue with Magic's strategic depth and the fan-favorite Ravnica setting. Ravnica...
We'll see. You know, if it was just a game of Clue like the original Clue, count me out. But if there's more nuance to it, if there's more, as they say, strategic depth to it, then, you know, you can maybe get me interested. Try it out on a board game night. Here we go. Fallout.
Stand by. Ah, that's better. We're excited to announce a new set of commander decks set in the universe of Fallout, arriving next March.
Okay, this is commander decks specifically. So, that could have an interesting element to it for, you know, commander games. Depending on how they tweak the cards, they might not see play in Eternal formats. As far as Fallout in Magic, I don't have a problem with it exactly. You know, they had a rule in Magic for a long time they didn't want guns. They wanted it to be a fantasy setting, they did not want guns. And honestly, if you ask people about D&D, whether they want guns in their D&D, that'll bring out some strong reactions in people too. A lot of people do not. I personally do not, unless it fits the kind of game that you want to be playing, the kind of story you want to tell. I am a fan of Fallout. I do love Fallout. And it's possible I could be tempted into liking this Universes Beyond crossover. If it was the scale of an entire set, let me just say that Magic could do Fallout without having to take the intellectual property of Fallout, right? You could have, you know, gnomish engineers in an apocalyptic wasteland, you know, left over from the fallout of the Eldrazi, wrecking the plane like Zendikar. Maybe another plane, though. And you could totally do a Fallout take in Magic Universe, right? Maybe even like reprint wastes, make colorless mana useful, make the cards all have kind of like a limited resources kind of feel to them, where not a lot of things generate value, right? You have to like discard a card to get a thing, sacrifice a land to get a thing, exile your top 10 cards of your library to get a thing, stuff like that. That would feel a lot like surviving in an apocalyptic wasteland in Magic without having to actually go to the intellectual property Fallout universe. And maybe they still will. Maybe we will see that setting in Magic, because there's some pretty interesting stuff later on in this lineup. I just wanted to throw out there that Magic has the tools. They can do this. They do not have to go into Fallout for it. All right, back to Mark Rosewater again.
Okay, next up, so we've done a lot of revisits to worlds that we've known, but you know, one of the things Magic does great is go to brand new worlds. So next is Outlaws of Thunder Junction.
What? Outlaws of Thunder Junction. I'm not sure what to say. It might be cool. So, yeah, I guess we'll get into it here in just a second, but it's not just a Western-themed set, it's also a villain-themed set, using the Omen Paths. So, I'm definitely curious.
So I talked earlier about when the Phyrexian War happened and the cosmology got changed, that it would allow us to do some stuff we weren't able to do before. So we had this idea we wanted to do for our set that was all about villains. And we could go to any one world and just...
So, in case you hadn't heard when the art was kind of previewed. This is Old Rutstein from Innistrad. Cool, huh? Same scar on the eye. Similar baggy outfit, not exactly. And seems to be carrying a bunch of fiery undead with him. Neat.
Just see the villains of that world, but what's even cooler is what if we had a set with villains from across the multiverse? Well, with the Omen Path, that's possible. So we have a brand new world where all the villains, or many of the villains, have started to gather. And what better place to do this than the Western genre? So
I sincerely hope that Baron Singir is here. Really sincerely hope that Olgrotha, the Homelands setting, makes its way into here. Based on the last visit to Olgrotha, Leshrac said that Baron Singir had mostly conquered the plane. And there are two, not one, but two planar portals that lead out of Olgrotha, and that's on top of the shenanigans with Omen Paths. So there's every possibility that characters from Homelands can start moving into other places. Another one that you might see from Homelands, I know, I shouldn't be talking about Homelands so much, whatever. It's Aeron the Relentless. He's immortal. In case you didn't know, that's why he regenerates. Grandmother Singir, Ravi, cast a spell on him when he helped her steal this powerful spell book. He gambled with her to have her cast the last spell in the book on him, and that's why he can regenerate. His body always comes back together no matter how many pieces it gets blown into. And he's immortal. So Aeron the Relentless could definitely be a villain who's still around, even after all this time. So could Baron Singir, obviously, he's a vampire. And then Grandmother Singir, she's probably more like a lich. Get right down to it. But yeah, it would be neat to see some of those characters from the Plane of Olgrotha here in Thunder Junction, I guess. Conniving and conspiring with other villains from across the multiverse. Sounds really cool. I guess a lot of people are going to be curious if Nicol Bolas manages to make it out of the plane he's entrapped in. And it's possible, right? The Phyrexians got the knowledge from Jace when they completed him of how and where Nicol Bolas was trapped. And there's been a lot of planar upset, so maybe Nicol Bolas, through an Omen Path or other means, could have escaped his prison. And now everyone's lost their spark, so whatever. He's still a dragon. Be kind of cool.
So people have been asking forever, when are we going to do this? We were looking for the right place to do it. This was it. The villain set on a frontier fantasy setting. And the combination of those two has made a very unique set that I think you guys are going to love. We wanted to do it right. We got cultural consultants and made sure that we were creating something that every...
Frankly, I'm not sure who this is. Whatley? Maybe? Other than that, no idea.
Everybody could truly love. Now, one of the coolest things about this set, like I said, it's villains from across the multiverse.
Okay. Maybe Oko? Thief of Crowns? Kind of looks like his crown, yeah. Some people have said this might be Tiny Bones. I don't really know who Tiny Bones is, but I'll take your word for it. Probably Vraska. If Nissa was able to walk off her being completed by the Phyrexians, just regrow her lower torso, whatever, it's fine. Then yeah, could be Vraska here.
Okay, next up, Modern Horizons 3. So
Now, I have said that reprint sets don't do it for me, but Modern Horizons is kind of a different beast, right? Modern Horizons, there have been some original card designs that have totally shaken up the format, made it into something other than the sum of its parts. That'll probably happen here again too, but I'm just not willing to pay a premium price for a product, right? I want to pay like, $3-4 and get a draft booster, or pay like $100 ish and get like a draft booster box. I'm not totally against the idea of set boosters. I kind of understand maybe the desire for a product to give to people who don't want to draft. Kind of makes sense. Collector boosters, I guess, are aimed at someone who's just not me. I don't want to get into it right now.
So Modern Horizon sets are a more advanced set. They allow a little more complex drafting environment, and they have access to all the mechanics of the past. But Modern Horizons 1 and 2 didn't actually have access to all the mechanics from the past, because there's some things that we just couldn't print on a single face. Modern Horizon 3 fixes that. So Modern Horizons 3 is introducing double face cards to Modern Horizons. So you want to see...
So that's kind of the big deal with this set. There'll be double face cards in it, and there could be reprints of double face cards. That's cool. So maybe we'll see like the Flipwalkers from Magic Origins as a, one possible consideration. I always liked them. Probably a whole bunch of other double face cards could use a good reprinting too. This set will probably end up being fun. It's just the price point. I just can't see paying the increased price point for a product like this. For who I am as a Magic player, for where I am, what I do, I don't see the appeal. I'd rather save my money for a brand new setting, standard legal, more on the cheap. Okay, so is this Ob Nixilis? Is he sitting on a throne made of angel wings? 'Cause wow. That's morbid. And yeah, kind of cool. In an extremely evil way,
And making it very fun. Once again, a great set to draft. For people that like that more complex sort of drafting environment, Modern Horizons has it there for you. And as you'll see from the pictures, there's some fun themes woven into the set.
And speaking of amazing drafting.
Okay, so it looks like Eldrazi Titans are going to be in Modern Horizons 3. They darn well better be. If you're going to use the images of all three of them, you better have the cards for all three of them. Are they going to have both versions of the cards for all three of them? That's a good question. But anyway, I'm a fan of the Eldrazi. If there are some new Eldrazi card designs in Modern Horizons 3, I might look into some singles.
At the end of 2024, our plan is to reach what we're calling Tournament Pioneer, making sure that all of the cards that are relevant for tournament caliber Pioneer play are available for players to add to their decks at the end of 2024.
So that's an interesting way to phrase it. All of the tournament caliber cards for Pioneer by the end of 2024. So let me just say here point blank that I'm not going to play Pioneer on Arena until the format is filled out with all of the cards that should be legal in Pioneer. I don't want anyone telling me what is or is not playable. I feel very strongly about this. Now, if what they're saying is that they're just not reprinting the, vanilla cards, the French vanilla cards, the cards that are genuinely draft chaff that have no possible use in any kind of combination of other cards, that it's just strictly, subpar in all ways, even then, I would still like to have access to the full card pool, please. So I appreciate that they're making progress. That's great. I want them to keep making progress. I want Pioneer to be fully fleshed out on Arena. Hopefully, sometime after they've done this, where they've gotten all the tournament staple whatevers, hopefully there will be some update down the line where they put all the garbage in too. Because I won't be happy until they do. It needs to have the whole roster, every stupid card. It's how I feel. When I'm deck building, right? If I go on Gatherer and I search through something with a keyword and I find a card and I say, "That's neat. That's really neat, huh? I wonder what that would do with this card over here." And then I go on Arena and it's not programmed in yet. That would be really infuriating. And that's why I'm not going to play Pioneer on Arena until every single last card is in. But let me just say to the people making Arena, thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for taking these steps, getting us closer. I hope that one day it's fully realized onto the format, along with other formats like Commander, multiplayer, things like that.
Help us get there. We're going to deliver Pioneer Masters, a draftable set that fills in those remaining archetype gaps while being a fun experience on its own. For Pioneer players who are looking for something a little bit less spiky, we'll continue to add fun and iconic cards through things like anthologies or through booster pack inserts as we can, because we want to support both tournament play and casual fun play for those players.
Well, hurry it up. You need the full list, all the cards, every single one.
Alongside these exciting releases, we're also going to look at better ways to integrate digital and tabletop together. We want to create a more unified ecosystem. We want players to be able to go to their local game store on Friday nights and play an F&M, and then on Saturday when they hop on Arena for a quick match, get notified that their games from Friday earn them enough experience to reach the next level of their Mastery Pass.
That would be amazing. And that would really incentivize someone like me to dust off my Magic collection, maybe trot out to my local game store, try an F&M. I have been slowly gathering up a handful of standard cards into one of my boxes, organizing them, starting to think about what kinds of budget archetypes I might be able to build with what I got. I've been eyeballing a black-green deck. I might try to build with some budget cards. But if they make this change, where maybe your DCI number or whatever gets linked into your Arena account, and then the two start talking to one another, and you can kind of keep track of your games in real life and digitally, both. That sounds amazing. That sounds great. I'd love to see a tab somewhere on Arena where I can look at my match history and then my physical cards match history and stuff like that. That sounds great.
There'll continue to be Commander deck-driven releases like Warhammer 40,000, Doctor Who, and Fallout. These are excellent ways to have a self-contained expressions of a world, its characters, and story. We'll also continue to have secret lair drops, some featuring mechanically unique cards like we did with Street Fighter and Stranger Things, and some featuring overlays of existing cards like we did with Fortnite and Arcane. An overlay is what we call the cards that you might think of as reskins. Additionally, we have UB cards that we think of as booster inserts. Transformers was a booster insert for the Brothers War. Jurassic World will be another booster insert. It's part of the Lost Caverns of Ixalan release, but its own expression that happens to be the perfect fit. Finally, we'll have different types of booster releases. So far you've seen The Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth, which is a large booster released much like a premiere set. We'll be discussing a second type in a minute. That was a lot, but what we want you to take away is that Universe Beyond takes many forms, and the focus is always to create the best experience for our fans.
Similarly, for Arena.
Okay, so all of that talk about Universes Beyond, I guess basically what it's saying is don't expect consistency of, a formulaic approach to every Universes Beyond. Every Universes Beyond is not going to be like 10 pre-made cards in a secret layer. It's not going to be a commander deck. It's going to take different forms. And that makes sense. That makes sense. Some products are going to be bigger than others. Some are going to be more involved than others. Some will be reskins. Some will be mechanically unique. I still don't really agree with the idea of Universes Beyond. I feel like Magic can do everything in a Universes Beyond in canon inside its own IP. Every single thing they're looking at, I feel like Magic can do on its own 2 feet. But I understand why they're taking different forms with it. Makes sense.
We'll continue to approach Universes Beyond in a similar way, where we're trying to create the right level of engagement for the product, for the players, as well as for our digital schedule. While we love to take each and every product, that just isn't always possible.
That's fine. I don't need every secret layer drop. I don't need every Universes Beyond. Frankly, if the Arena client is kept a little bit more clean and streamlined down to the products that really matter, right? Things that are like standard legal, kind of format defining stuff, then you don't have to give me all the cosmetics. That sounds great, actually.
We announced a while back a partnership with Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed, and
Assassin's Creed, I'm gonna kind of skip on past this because I have not played Assassin's Creed. I don't know that much about it. Some of them I've heard from my friends have, very good stories, are great games, and then some of them aren't as good. I definitely have friends who are fans of this. I feel like it would be fine. It's probably Magic can tell something in Assassin's Creed as a compelling story. The cards aren't too far out of whack with Magic's flavor. It's probably fine. And I don't have very much to add about this, and I'm not really excited about this. Okay, Mark Rosewater's back up again.
Okay, so Wilds of Eldraine was the start of the first Magic year, the first arc. Now we begin the start of the second arc, what we're calling the Dragonstorm arc. Why Dragonstorm? Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Actually, they don't get to that. They do not explain why it's Dragonstorm. So we have to speculate here. So Omen Paths is the first arc. That's right. That's laying the groundwork of connecting the worlds together. Kind of talking about what the Omen Paths are doing, who's traveling through them, maybe get an idea of how they work a little bit. So, part 2, Dragonstorm. Could be a lot of things, right? Dragons are all over the game. Does make me wonder a little bit about Nicol Bolas. Or, maybe if some fighting is sprung up again between the Elder Dragons, that kind of thing. Could be, a plane like Tarkir has a special purpose, special place in Dragonstorm arc of the story. But really, we're given no details, so we'll just have to find out.
So 2 weeks ago at San Diego Comic-Con, I showed a bunch of images that I said we were going to talk about. And the one that got the most discussion was this little mouse with a little leaf cape fighting a big wolf.
Redwall! Okay, it's Bloombarrow. I enjoyed the Redwall novels when I was younger. I mean, those of you who are still fans of Redwall out there, please don't shoot me, but anyone who's a fan and has read like 15 of Brian Jacques' novels, at some point you've got to admit that they become formulaic, right? Bad guy the X rolls into town. The animals are initially unprepared. There's some big feasts that happen. Ultimately, bad guy the X is defeated in the end of the book. They were very entertaining at the time, but once I had read that similar kind of formula for like 13 or 15 books, eventually I kind of got out of it. But still I've got a soft spot for Redwall. Then there's, other settings, like Watership Down, stuff like that lends itself to this, and I think this will be fine. I think it'll be fun. I'm not like completely stoked about this like some people might be, but I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it. Depending on the set mechanics, maybe I'll enjoy it a lot.
Well, finally we've gotten there. This is Bloombarrow. So Bloombarrow is a world of anthropomorphic animals where there's no humans. You'll see rabbits and birds and rats and mice and raccoons, and it's a world in which the animals are the main characters. It's done in scope so that each animal is the actual size of that animal, but they wear clothes and have weapons, and you get to have a really fun, I guess charming is the word I have to use. This is probably the most charming world we've ever made for Magic. It really leans into some of the fantasy elements, but it has this, I don't even know how to describe it. It just has this lovely aspect that is really heartwarming. And I remember
he's trying so hard to avoid saying cutesy or adorable.
Seeing when the art finally came in this set, it will melt your heart. It's a really fun, lovable set. Following Bloombarrow is Duskmourn, House of Horror.
Now, Duskmourn, House of Horror, this one I'm really interested in. Even though I'm not that much of a fan of horror, there are certain elements of the horror genre that I do like and I am interested in. And this one tickles my fancy. Actually, reminds me of something.
So this is a top-down modern horror set. This is about as far away from we can get from Bloombarrow. We've done horror before on Ixalan, on New Phyrexia, but this is exploring a different realm of horror, a more modern sensibility, think kind of like 70s and 80s horror. So this is a brand new world. The entire world takes place inside a giant mansion with creepy corridors and weird rooms, and really playing into all the fun of modern horror.
All right, so the entire plane takes place in a single haunted mansion, which seems to be indicating that maybe the entire plane is one entity and the so-called mansion that you go into is alive. And this feels very much to me like one of the domains of dread from Ravenloft. If anyone out there plays D&D, right? Ravenloft isn't just the Curse of Strahd. That's one domain of dread. Ravenloft is a plane with a bunch of different sort of pocket dimensions that are all their own individual domain of dread. And this one feels like it could be a domain of dread straight out of Ravenloft in D&D. And hey, for all I know, maybe it is. You know, the same company owns both intellectual properties. That'd be cool, actually.
I have to say, I don't know if we've ever had a transition between worlds that is stark between the charming cuteness of Bloomborough and the creepiness of Duskmourn.
Bloomborough and Duskmourn look amazing, Mark. That wraps it for 2024.
Innistrad Remastered. Kicking off 2025. Yeah, you know how I feel about remastered sets. I don't need to go into it again. You know whether this set is for you or not. I'm just gonna move on to the next.
Okay, next up is tennis. So I said when I was talking about Outlaws of Thunder Junction, how the change in the cosmology is letting us do some stuff that we couldn't do before. So we have had this idea for a long time, actually, to do a death race, where people racing, but I mean, super serious and racing against each other. But
Okay, a death race? Like the old movie, like Death Race 2000 or whatever it was? You know, GURPS has some kind of a setting like this too, where cars battle against each other with like guns strapped to them and stuff. What's it called? Auto Duel? Yeah, I think it's called Auto Duel in GURPS. Really strange concept to add into Magic.
But the Omen Path allows us to do something really cool, that the race doesn't have to be confined to one world. In fact, the death race goes across 3 different worlds. Now, I'm not allowed to tell you what the worlds are yet, but I'll give you a little bit of hint. So 2 of the worlds are worlds that we've been to in premiere sets that we haven't returned to in another premiere set yet. And the third world we have seen on cards, but we've never visited as a main setting of a premiere set. So we're going to...
Okay. So the death race is going to go across 3 planes, presumably through the Omen Paths. 2 of them are on places that we have not gone back to. But they have been part of a premiere set. That could even be old. That's not likely. I don't think Old Growtha is like a shoe-in on this one. But it could be an older set. And then one that has seen cards, but wasn't an entire set unto itself. That makes me think of Magic Origins. And thinking about Magic Origins, I'm just going to go ahead and say Vryn. Vryn is the 3rd set he's talking about here, where it featured on cards, but it wasn't the entire set. I'm talking about Vryn from Magic Origins, with the Mage Rings, the place where Jace was born. I'm going with Vryn. Now the other 2... Let's see, we haven't been back to Kaladesh yet, have we? I could be misremembering. So here are my hot takes on what the planes are going to be for Death Race Tennis. Vryn is going to be the 3rd one he's referring to. We saw it in Magic Origins a little bit. Kaladesh is going to be one of the ones for sure. And I'm going to say that the other one is Mercadia. Yep, I'm going with Mercadia as my other choice. Mercadia seems like the kind of place where the spectacle of people racing to the death, the investment in the spectacle, something to keep the people occupied and entertained while all the corruption takes place, all of the betting that happens on the race, all of it feels Mercadian to me. So I'm going to say Kaladesh, Mercadia, and Vryn are the 3 planes that the death race is going to take place on. That's that's my prediction, folks. And as far as whether I'm interested in this set, I guess it's going to have a bunch of vehicles. I like artifacts. So there's that. I think it's kind of a goofy premise for a set, but whatever. Magic's done some goofy stuff in the past. Yeah, give me an artifact set, give me a bunch of vehicles. Why not? It's not the thing I'm looking forward to the most, but I don't hate it.
Flesh that out, and these 3 worlds will be the racetrack for the death race. So I'm very excited for that. Next up is Ultimate. So I just introduced
Ultimate
a whole bunch of
Frisbee?
new worlds, but people always ask us to go back to worlds that they love, and Ultimate is a return to one of the worlds we get asked about all the time, Tarkir. So we are going back. The phrase we've been using in design is the best of both worlds, which means we want to take all the awesome things about Khans of Tarkir and the awesome things about Dragons of Tarkir and blend them together.
Not Fate Reforged? No? Crickets?
To make a Tarkir like you've never seen, yet reminiscent of Tarkirs you have seen. So it's very fun, and it's a really cool set, and there might be some dragons in it. Okay, so that moves us next to a set that's not for me to talk about. So, Athena, why don't you talk about this next set?
We're
Okay, so seriously, happy to go back to Tarkir. Got good memories of it, right? I was telling you all about the standard deck that I still have put together somewhere around here, called Turtles All the Way Down, with the board sweepers, Wandering Tower Shell, and Phytotitan. Anyway, I liked the set. I liked the setting. You know, the whole the wedges, I think they call it, the enemy color wedges that it's built around. It's fun. It'd be good to go back.
excited to announce that the Final Fantasy franchise is the next Universes Beyond tentpole booster release coming.
Oh boy. So there's nothing about Final Fantasy that can't mesh into Magic. Right? I realize it's its own world, does its own stuff, kind of involves more technology than you usually see in Magic. Not always, though. Right? There are settings like Kaladesh that feel quite a bit like Final Fantasy. So I think you could fit it in, probably. I mean, really, there's no strong reason to do this, and it could backfire because I think Final Fantasy's coming out with their own card game, and it might draw interest away from Magic. Be that as it may, it'll be neat, kind of fun to see some of those characters as Magic cards, I guess. Again, I don't know how I feel about Universes Beyond as a whole. Actually, maybe I do know how I feel about it, and it's kind of a eh. I'd rather see Magic's take on anything Final Fantasy-ish that doesn't already exist in Magic. That would be my preference. But it's coming, and, whatever. It's fine, I guess. Okay, so Final Fantasy stuff is going to import onto Arena. If it's standard legal, I will definitely be invested in what's happening. If it's not, eh.
The team is super excited to bring Final Fantasy to Arena and show our love and respect for a game that has touched and shaped so many of us as designers. So we have a couple core objectives that we're using to drive our decision making. The first is, how do we create more Magic players? This is why we emphasized our new player experience this year and why it was important to have the Lord of the Rings.
Whoa. I understand that Lord of the Rings is drawing in interest. For sure. And Wizards can go ahead and pat themselves on the back on that one. They knocked the ball out of the park. Just because I didn't mesh for whatever reason with Lord of the Rings does not mean that other people didn't. I gotta give credit where credit's due. But in terms of onboarding new players, the intellectual property of Lord of the Rings might draw them in, right? Get them interested in the cards a little bit. But the mechanics of Lord of the Rings is complicated. It's not an easy set, right? You've got the Ring Tempts You, which is not dissimilar from venturing into the dungeon from the Forgotten Realms, because it tracks something for which there is no game piece. Right? If you don't have the game piece, that's just this extra little reminder card of what the Ring Tempts You does, then it's easy to lose track of. Right? And then you need a reminder, like a token or something that you put on one of your creatures to say this is the ring bearer. I'm not saying it's impossible to do. I'm not saying that a new player might not even be capable of doing it. It's just a high bar of complexity for a new player. And I would think that in terms of onboarding new players, you would much rather have like a core set experience. I don't so much mean the old core sets that were all reprints. I mean the more recent core sets. Things like Magic Origins and some of the other core sets of recent years, where a bunch of the designs are new, the cards are very clean, easy to grasp, good, simple, powerful effects that are good at demonstrating and teaching the game. So let's not pretend like this was the ideal circumstance here, right? The IP is going to draw in new players, but the experience of learning the rules of Lord of the Rings, that's a lot of complexity for a new player. And furthermore, let me just have a little soapbox moment here. Commander is a format where you have a 100 card deck where they're all singleton, right? So you have 100 unique effects other than basic lands. So let's say like 80 unique effects that a new player has to learn, and the players that they're going up against have decks with 80 or 100 unique effects in them. And you won't see all of those cards in a single game of Commander, but there's every possibility that a new player might get exposed to as many cards in a game of Commander as an entire expansion set worth of cards would have been, except that they're not made to go together like an expansion set. They could have keywords and weird abilities from across all of Magic, like the City's Blessing and venturing into the dungeon, and here's a planeswalker, and here's a battle, and here's this, and here's that, and they're all just kind of jammed together. So, let's just say Commander is a very questionable way of trying to teach a new player the game, something that a lot of people might throw their hands up in the air and say, this game isn't for me, and walk away. Whereas if you'd started them off a little simpler, maybe they would really get into it, and then a few months in, maybe they decide Commander is the format for them. But not immediately, not like the first game they play, you know? Anyway.
Delivered specifically so we could reach more players through their love of Middle-earth. We also know that we had some opportunities to provide better experience for those players that we just didn't have the bandwidth to execute on. So part of what we're discussing now is how do we fill those gaps? What do we need to bring in more players and introduce them to the best game in the world? In order to answer this, we also need to understand what we're missing. So for digital, we think there's an opportunity to better serve players who might be intimidated by jumping into a free-to-play player versus player experience right out of the gate. So we're actively discussing how can we address that? How can we give players a sandbox where they can have fun and be comfortable building their Magic skills without the pressures of winning and losing it, particularly in front of other players?
That sounds like they're talking about something more like the experience of Chandelar or some of the there were like the little Duels of the Planeswalker games, which I still own them. I still have them on my Steam account. I think they were coming out with them like every year just about. You'd get some pre-constructed decks and you could upgrade the cards and the precons, right? there'd sort of be like a little limited pool that you'd unlock as you played games, where you can decide what the final list looks like out of like, 90 or 100 cards you have access to in total. And you can unlock different decks as well with the cards that upgrade those decks. That was a neat play experience, and even as an enfranchised player, I had fun with it. So if they brought something like that back, I think it would be fine. Now, I don't think it's fine if they do what they did with that product line, including Duels of the Planeswalkers, which is abandon it. Stop giving updates. Just never come back to it again, pretend it doesn't exist, bury their head in the sand, and move on to the next hot digital thing. I think a lot of people are looking pointedly at Arena and Magic the Gathering Online. And they're wondering if these formats, if these platforms are going to be around forever. And if they're not, are they going to do anything for the people who've invested all of that time and money on those platforms? Because Duels of the Planeswalkers got kind of left in the dust. And some people definitely dropped a lot of money on that game. I didn't. I played it for free, but I enjoyed it. So. But if they end up moving to other game clients, or, just they keep Arena going, but they have this other thing over here which does Commander and multiplayer games, because maybe they can't figure out how to put it into Arena, or Arena's too resource intensive, or I don't know. I just very much hope that if they do that, or if they shelve Arena or Magic the Gathering Online, that you can take your resources, import your collection from those games, import your event tickets, import your gold and gems, all that stuff, and get some kind of payoff in the next game that comes down the road, to where you don't feel like you were just cast off. You spent hundreds of hours of your life or hundreds of dollars of your money, and now you have nothing to show for it. As long as they solve for that, then I'm cool with whatever new digital client comes along. Or if they just expand Arena, that's great. That's fine. But yeah, I think I'm not alone in this concern that I have. That don't leave us behind. Don't waste our time. Don't waste our money. Please let us carry our collection forward.
Second, we know that there are a lot of types of Magic players. And currently, Arena is addressing a specific portion, those who are, again, big fans of the 1v1 player experience. So, another lens we're using to talk about the future is, if you're already a Magic fan, what digital experience are you missing? And then...
Commander. Okay, sure. Emperor Rainbow Stairwell. 2-player draft. I could go on.
Arena is a really good, player versus player game, but it doesn't support more than 2 players. So, how do we get 3 or more players at the table, at the digital table? And how are we going to deliver in these spaces? Do we continue to add to Arena itself? Do we look at Arena as a core platform that we can expand and create different iterations that serve different needs? If we're doing that and tailor making these experiences for players, how do we keep everybody connected in the ecosystem? This is a bunch of work that we have to figure out and make sure that we're building this one unified Magic experience for players who have different needs. So we want to make sure that we have that connective tissue for those experiences.
I hope what they mean by connective tissue here is not losing access to the resources you already have, right? The digital resources. Gold, gems, cards, event tickets. etc.
Okay, so this is the beginning of sort of the third of the Magic years. So first we had the Omen Path Arc, then we had the Dragonstorm Arc, and this year is the Censored Arc. Now, it's not called the Censored Arc. I'm just not allowed to say what it is, because it gives too much away. But this is the third year of our next storyline of Metronome. So volleyball, when Kamigawa Neon Dynasty came out, we really pushed the boundaries a little bit on what we could do with science fiction. The audience responded really well to that. And so we decided we wanted to keep pushing. I mean, Jess talked about at the beginning of this, how we're pushing boundaries. So we are going to explore a space we've never explored before. Space! We are going to outer space. Volleyball is a space opera set. And we...
Okay. Gotta say, this is something I did not expect to see in Magic, at least not within 10 years or so. Maybe eventually. But here it is, it's coming. And I've got a prediction for this set, actually. My prediction, I made a video recently talking about the 8 weirdest planes that Magic could visit in the future. I'm going to say right here and now that this is my number 2 pick on that list. I don't think this is Xerix. Xerix was number 1. But rather than Xerix, I think this is Iquitana. I think this is going to be the plane of Iquitana that you see on the card The Ether Flows. That's got a couple other references too, right? Like Narcomoeba and Jace's Phantasm. So Iquitana, the ether itself, it completely like infuses the atmosphere, right? A lot of the atmosphere is made up of ether. Ether is like the raw stuff of Magic in the Blind Eternities. And if that's true of Iquitana, it's not too much of a stretch to imagine that it could be like Spelljammer in D&D, where ships can sail through the astral medium to go from place to place, which is taking space and putting it into a fantasy setting. That might not be what's happening here at all, but that's my prediction.
We are literally going into outer space. And there's a lot of cool things. We had to figure a lot of stuff out, none of which I can talk about yet, but it's a top-down space opera set. Next up, wrestling. So wrestling, I said before when I talked about Ultimate, how there are worlds that we visited once and we haven't come back to, and the players ask us to come back to them. Well, there's one world that I get more requests than any other world. This is a common request on my blog I get all the time. And wrestling is finally going back to this world. So people who read my blog are excited right now because they know what I'm talking about. But the rest of you, I will tell you, we are going back to Lorwyn. So Lorwyn is a very charming set built on Celtic lore. It goes back and...
I'm excited to return to Lorwyn. I have fond memories of Lorwyn. That's when the Planeswalkers first came out. It was right after Time Spiral block. So in Future Sight, I believe it was Tarmogoyf that hinted at the existence of the Planeswalker card type, just like Atraxa recently hinted at the existence of battles. So yeah, Planeswalkers first premiered in Lorwyn. They were just rares at the time. Mythic Rarity came not long after that. Didn't exist right at that moment. Tons of fun. No humans on Lorwyn, as I recall, but plenty of fantasy races, right? There's Kithkin, Merfolk, Elementals, Treefolk, Elves, Giants. There's a couple more I think I'm forgetting. But yeah, really cool. The whole plane shifts between a light aspect and a dark aspect. On the light aspect, elves are like villains because they're this kind of horrible society based around beauty and killing things that are not beautiful. On the dark side, everything shifts into this, kind of nightmare realm, and the elves are sort of like the defenders of beauty. And the creatures themselves don't remember the transition. It just seems like it always was, either light or dark. Kolfanor, in the original story, he's this evil tree folk, managed to figure out a way to sort of reincarnate himself from one to the other. So Kolfanor was able to remember both Shadowmoor and Lorwyn. Anyway, I could go on, but it's a really neat fantasy setting. Oh, fairies, of course. Fairies are one of the big tribes. Duh. Of course, fairies. I thought I was going to be really into the fairies tribe, and then they were really too powerful and everywhere ad nauseum. So then I was not as much into fairies because of that. Initially, I was excited for the fairies, though. So it'll be cool to go back to Lorwyn. No idea how it's going to change, and he does say here that it's not going to be exactly the same.
Forth between Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, we are finally revisiting Lorwyn, and much like we did with Kabakawa and Neon Dynasty, we are finding a way to bring back all the things you love about the original world, but find new twists on it and bring a new sensibility to the world. So that is wrestling. Which brings us to 2026.
Ooh.
I can't believe I'm saying you 2026.
2026, Mark?
Oh my goodness. So like, you know how you're driving a car and the gas gauge gets to E, but you keep on driving? There's that thrill you get. I feel like we're on E right now. These are sets that I'm literally in vision design working on right now. Like I couldn't even tell you the mechanics of these sets. We haven't finalized them yet. We're still figuring out what's in them. Okay, so yachting is another return. We are going to the plane of Arcavios, which is the home of Strixhaven.
Totally excited to be going back to Strixhaven. I love it. So when I came back into playing Magic, and I don't even mean paper Magic, I've just barely started getting my toe back into paper, but I mean even Arena. I came back in around the time of like this current standard, but I mean Innistrad. You know, like I kind of came back and there was like Midnight Hunt and, Crimson Vow. Those were the, recent sets, and I started picking up right then, and I've been playing since then. So my collection's pretty good for Standard right now on Arena. But I did go back and pick up some things that were Standard legal at the time, and I love Strixhaven. I loved what I saw of it. I loved the lessons in particular. Figuring out how to build a good lesson sideboard, man, just loved it. And even though the set had, some minor issues, its power level wasn't quite as high, and there were a whole lot of cards with a lot of modality and a lot of text on them that ended up, maybe not being worth your time because the card didn't quite make the cut. Wasn't quite good enough despite having all of the modes and text on it. But frankly, I love Strixhaven. Loved what I saw of it. I even loved the bonus sheet cards with the alternate art. I don't always go in for that kind of thing. Don't always like the art styles that they use for it. Completely loved it in the case of Strixhaven. Thought it was slam dunk, knocked it out of the park, fantastic set. Just kind of enjoyed everything about it. So very happy to be going back to Strixhaven and Arcavios.
The Magical College. It's a fan favorite, and we are returning to there in yachting. Finally, we get to ziplining. So ziplining is similar to War of the Spark or March of the Machine, where it's what we call a capstone event set that's the big giant finale of the storyline. But I can't tell you the theme, I can't tell you the villain, I can't tell you where it happens, I really can't tell you anything about it because everything I can tell you is spoilers galore. But suffice to say, I'm really excited on it. It's a set that I'm
Okay, so all we know is that it's a capstone event set of this kind of 3-year timeline of story, of real Magic story. Like, cutting out all the stuff that we looked at as far as the universes beyond and whatever, in terms of the actual Magic story, this is a big capstone set. It'll probably be great. War of the Spark was a pretty amazing set, right? It wasn't perfect maybe, but I think a lot of people, myself included, enjoyed the, how do we fit like 30 planeswalkers into the set? How do we make uncommon planeswalkers? It was pretty neat. March of the Machine. I love March of the Machine. I had so much fun in the draft environment of March of the Machine. It's as deep as can be. It's swingy and ridiculous. So, based on my experience with those 2 past sets that were capstone sets, I have high hopes and high expectations for ziplining. So there you have it. A look 3 years into the future. I'm sure, they've skipped over, 150 secret layers and some other stuff. But frankly, I'm pretty excited about most of it. I like for Magic to test its boundaries. I like for Magic to see, what the players want, what the players don't like. That's good feedback too. The failures you learn even more from than the successes. The only thing I don't really care so much for are the universes beyond. I could do without them. I think Magic would be better for not having them. But that doesn't outweigh my excitement over all of the other amazing things that are coming. Don't have much negative feedback for you, really. If it's a real Magic set, like a real, expert level expansion, whatever you want to call it, premier level set, right? Part of the standard rotation, draft environment, all that stuff. All those sets look amazing. Some more than others, but yeah, I'm on board. I'm digging it. So, what do you think? What are your favorite ones? What are your least favorite ones? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, never stop honing your critical thinking and empathy.